Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. This is your host, Dr. FM, on today's Africa, an opportunity to talk about matters pertaining to Africa, things that are happening, things that have happened. We all have a past and we all have a future. And obviously, we'll be talking about what is to come. So I'm very, very delighted today that we have this great opportunity to meet up. We go live every Saturday at 11 Eastern Standard Time. We are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, StreamYard. And so, again, this is your host, Dr. FM, Francis Munangi Mpindu, and we're delighted that you have joined us today. We do have quite a number of listeners and viewers around the world. We are broadcasting in over 100 different countries around the world. So we're delighted. The listenership, the viewership is growing. And so if you haven't done that already, would like to encourage you to subscribe, sign in, log in, so that you can like and share this channel with other people in your networks, and we would be delighted to make sure that we continue to expand. So today we are very, very delighted to have this wonderful, wonderful topic. We are talking about youth development. We're talking about grooming our young leaders. I know in the flyer it ended up coming out as our future leaders, and I think that's my mistake. I should have caught that because I really wanted us to be talking about young leaders, because our young people are they're not just our future leaders. Yes, there is an aspect of future leaders because some of them are still very, very young, but we also recognize that they are also leaders of today. And so it is important that we keep those two aspects in mind: future leaders, but also present day leaders. And of course, you know what is happening on the continent in Africa right now. It's exciting to see young people rising up and saying, hey, listen, we know and we respect our older leaders and our present leaders, but this is a new day. And so we're going to be getting into this. And today we are just delighted to have a special guest with us. And her name is Annie G. She goes by Annie G. Annie Gonyora. And we're delighted that she has joined us today. I will be bringing her in momentarily. She is a visionary. She is a storyteller. And she is a change maker. And I really mean that. Over the last few weeks, I've come to know her, and she was referred to me by some other people who knew her well enough to actually say, here's someone you need to connect with. And so we are really in for a real treat today. And again, this is your host, Dr. FM, Francis Munangi Mpindu, here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, the #1 online radio station. And we are just delighted that you have joined to be with us. So we go live every Saturday, 11 Eastern Standard Time, and we are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, StreamYard. So we are here. We're glad you're here. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our special guest today. Like I said, Annie G. Annie Gonyora is with us, and we're delighted that she has made time to be with us. Remember, when we start, we usually say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Well, she is in that part of the world where it is evening. And of course, in North America, this is morning. And those in Europe, it's in the afternoon. And she is in Dubai. So thank you, Miss Annie, for joining us today. And please tell us who you are. I know when we talk about you being a visionary, you being a storyteller, and I've had opportunities to see some of your presentations, just marvelous, masterpieces. And so you are a visionary, you are an entrepreneur, you are a change maker, you are, Tell us a little more about who you are.
Well, I'll start off to say thank you for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it when people uh, uh, they I don't know, they like my story enough to want to share it with the world. So I appreciate the invite. Um, what I am is tired. You know, if anything, being a visionary comes with a lot of constraints and a lot of challenges. But who I am, if I was to sum it up, I'm a Pan African at heart with a deep passion for Africa, all things Africa, from startups to young people, young minds, young development, women. I'm an advocate for social impact. I'm a mom of three. My most important role of them all, uh, three wonderful girls. I'm a mixed masala, if I would like to call it. I don't think I fit into any box, so to speak. I've always known since I was a young child that it's very difficult to define who I am without having um, to need over an hour to, to really stretch that out. But I would like to say, for more than anything, I'm a person who is just grounded on impact. That's who Annie is. It doesn't matter in what genre, in what industry. Um, that's the core center of my values more than anything.
Thank you very much for that abbreviated intro. And there is a lot more that we're going to be digging into. And I'm really, really delighted that we have this opportunity to meet up with you today. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're going to be talking about youth development, looking into this whole idea of grooming our young leaders. And
Yeah.
our special guest today, Annie Gonyora, is someone who is very, very committed to developing
Yeah.
young people. And she's going to be telling us some of the things that she is looking forward to, but we also will be hearing some of the things she is doing and some of the things
Yeah.
that she has done. I mean, you have introduced yourself. You are a mother and you are a woman, and you don't have to apologize for that. That's who you are. That's who God has created you to be. And thank God
Absolutely.
for women. Just last week we were celebrating Mother's Day, and I'm sure that your three girls are delighted to have a mom like you, someone who
Absolutely.
is out there standing up and advocating for
Yeah.
social change, social impact, making a
Yeah.
difference in the world. So as we think about some of the things, your own journey, we usually say everybody has a past and everybody
Yeah.
has a future. So what are
Okay.
some of the things that have contributed to who you are today? Like what has brought you here? I'm very delighted that I'm seeing this version of you because I don't know what you were like before, but I like this
Yeah.
version you are working with. So
I like
something
this
has
version
happened in
too.
your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear
So,
that. So something has happened. So something has happened to you prior to this. Please fill us in on some of the things that has led to being who you are today.
So, to be honest, I've always been a go-getter as a child. Uh, my dad actually used to say that he was more scared of me than he was of my mother. You know, tough disciplinarian, very focused. I knew from a very young age what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be, right? So I was a multi-talented child. I was both academic and I was also creative, right? But growing up in those eras in the 80s, the creatives hadn't really found a place for themselves. Creatives were just known as the alternative choice when you couldn't do well in school. Creatives were seen as hobbies, nothing that could materialize into a career. I'd always loved fashion. I'm a twin. So my need to differentiate myself from my twin sister and not have my parents dress us up the same way, I would always alternate the type of clothes, change my clothes a bit, to make them look a little bit different. That's where my passion for fashion started when I was just 15 years old. And I was lucky because somebody who was at that time quite a big designer in Zimbabwe at that point took a keen eye on me, because every time I went to my father's office, he had his own shop really close to my dad. And I would always go there, just pick up the fabrics, I would feel the textures, ask him, what is this? What can I do with this? And he had the guts to tell my dad that, hey, you need to support your child because she looks like she's a natural creative. Naturally, my parents were supportive in terms of they never limited us to discover what things we liked, but it just was never a career choice for them. So I first showcased for Zim Rural, being the youngest ever designer to be on the platform. And my entire collection was made completely by my hands. I didn't have the resources. I had not been taught what to do, but I could just do it. Which was the first realization I had that this is what I wanted to do. Fast forward later, by the time I was 19, I had done all Miss Zim Earth, Miss Zim Rural, Miss Zim Professional. I had done different fashion weeks. And I was really pretty privileged that a lot of influential people were very supportive of me. And it kind of gave me a bit of direction, and it kind of gave me a head start in comparison to my fellow designers, which is why I then co-founded the Bulayo Board of Designers. Um, Initially, it was to give everybody a chance, or give them a platform where designers could come, exchange ideas, collaborate and stuff. But I still felt like it wasn't enough. Fashion was just not enough. Here I am. I'm an academic. I know things. I'm more aware of things, and I'm also a creative, and I'm trying to find ways in which I could fuse the two together. Hence the birth of the board. And I'm like, it's not enough to just do fashion shows, talk about fashion. What could we do? Our part to help with the impact, right? So we started doing cleanup campaigns. We actually I collaborated with some fellow designers as well under Blau Board of Designers to do Matebelen Fashion Week collection that was based on a story about rape. It actually won most outstanding um, show. And that was for me the first realization that, okay, I want to do more impact driven initiatives. Right. So I did it all. I collaborated with IMA as well for their ZITF stand, did a garment that relates and reflects the effects of mining on our environment through garmentry. I always knew that I was a creator, but obviously, your parents encourage you to go into school, follow a more academic background, which I did. I went to varsity to study accounting. Uh, but that thing was always there, right? And though I was really doing well in terms of my academics, but I just didn't feel like I had the connect. I really felt that I was supposed to be out there. Um, so fast forward later, I find myself in Swaziland, an unknown place. I didn't know anyone. I had no relatives there. And I decided to volunteer at a national care point in Egopeleni that was in Mbabane. What was supposed to be a 6-month trial ended up being 4 years. My role there was to teach, help kids learn how to draw, how to sculpt, how to create different things, teach them how to speak. Or as you might know, that Swaziland has the highest rate of HIV, so there's a lot of child-headed homes there. I started off with 19 kids that would come every morning. We would read, write, play games, and eventually we had 66 kids. I think that was my aha moment. My ability to use my academic skills, my professional skills, and also use my creative skills to make an impact was very profound for me. What would have turned out just volunteering ended up having a building built for the kids to come learn, having a library completely donated with books, toys, you name it. Because now I could merge both worlds, use the skills I've learned in work. And my career actually was somewhat of a roller coaster because I was trying to find myself, because Africa has told you and that designing is not a career. You are just a tailor, and my parents are coming from medic industry. It's like, how do you explain that? Oh, my child is a tailor. Like, it was unheard of. So my career was a bit more leaned on towards startups. I started working with startups from as little as 23 years old in different industries. At the beginning, it seemed somewhat like a mixed masala of what does she really want to do. I dabbled in hospitality, I dabbled in customer success, I dabbled in marketing, advertising. But the one thing that was very predominant was that every field I worked in, it did not take me more than 6 months to excel into management. And I'm like, okay, so eventually that narrative that seemed somewhat like, what is your career path? You seem a little confused, actually became one of my selling points. My passion to support startups, which I eventually then explored when I moved to Dubai, where I was actually now working hand in hand with founders, to help them with their investor relations. But even then, being in a world where I'm in VC, in investor relations, I still felt like something was still missing. So I'm always one of those people that will identify where there's the loopholes. And the loopholes for me was that we don't have the right mindset in Africa, in my perception. We want the funding, yes. We have the great ideas, we have the business structures, but do we have the right mindset? So I started doing the business development and exploring how I could actually assist startups change the way in which they presented themselves, the way in which they envisioned their businesses, what approach that they took, and what are the things that made them less investable in comparison to our counterparts in the West. So all of that, I'm still reflecting. I still haven't found my ground. I still haven't really got it yet. Because when you are so multi-versatile, you tend to always feel like you have a certain level of imposter syndrome. Like, what right do I have to talk about this? What right do I have to speak about this? Because in me trying to navigate different industries, what I felt for a very long time, or what the world made me feel like you don't have a career path or whatever, to me actually seemed like I'm the best fit to actually talk about things because I have lived and been able to explore different avenues, different genres, different industries. So I was able to see from a third eye looking in to see, okay, this is what we needed to do. But still, it didn't feel like it was enough. And I kind of felt that, okay, with everything that I had gone through, can you imagine if somebody had taken a multi-talented child who was both academic and creative and actually groomed them to become a powerhouse? Imagine if they could put me in mentorship classes, in mentorship tutorials, to be able to channel whatever energies, whatever things that were coming out of my mind to make it tangible products. Imagine if they could do that for a 15-year-old. I cannot imagine what stages I would be at that point. And this is how 1,000,001 Foundation started. I've been in corporate for a while here in Dubai, but there was a point where I just kind of felt like, that urge to make a change just does not leave you. And that's the point I got to where everything in my body kept saying, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially with our young kids. And when I thought about 1,000,001, it wasn't just a foundation I thought to teach kids to do soft skills because I couldn't. It was equipping our children with skills that they could actually use, relevant to the demographic, because the templates that are used in the West cannot work for Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we have kids learning things that they cannot use in their everyday life. And the only way they're programmed to think is to go to school and find a job and hopefully get promoted. But given the way the world is so competitive, and now we're not even talking about the integration of AI, it's going to get a lot tougher. But imagine if we could equip our kids with the life skills, soft skills, with mindset skills to actually become wholesome in the places they're at, then there's going to be a less likely chance for them to want to find work, relocate, move to diaspora, and leave Africa to its demise. So when we
You know,
start,
Annie,
yeah,
Annie, you just stole my thunder. I was going to interrupt you before you started speaking about the 1,000,001 Foundation, because I know you're
yeah,
very passionate about that.
yeah,
And I want us to follow that. But
okay,
just listening to you, I am fascinated by this reality that we seem to have an approach to formal education and life that does not seem to be inclusive to those who do not fit the box that we have created or has been created for us. And so here you are, someone who thinks outside of the box and oftentimes without the box, and there is no category for you to be able to go to school, to be able to find work, to be able, because you are not the kind of person who is looking for work. You create work. You get into a place and you're like, listen, this is what I'm capable of doing. Okay, what's available? Okay, let's start doing this.
yeah.
So I'm saying to myself, this is something that I really hope that our viewers and our listeners would love to have you help us in terms of, because I believe we do have children like that, we do have youth like that,
Yes,
and
they
and
do.
and we need to tap into intentional processes and strategies to include them so that they feel they're part of that. So,
Exactly.
our viewers, our listeners, those of you who just joined us, welcome. This is your host, Dr. FM, on today's Africa, and we're delighted. We're talking about youth development, grooming our young leaders, and we're delighted that we have Miss Annie Gonyora here, who is a visionary, who is an entrepreneur, who is a storyteller, who is a change maker, I should say, someone who is a game changer. So please fill us in on that 1,000,001 foundation you started talking about.
Yeah, so it came from a place of frustration. Um, I wasn't feeling fulfilled in the work that I was doing. I was very grateful for the opportunities that God has awarded me. I don't take it lightly, but for me, I felt like every place I have worked, every every room I have been was intentionally for me to fulfill this purpose. So how it was born is that I was looking at my girl children, and I was like, what blueprint am I giving them that's going to allow them to live a life that is different to mine? Because fortunately for me, I gave birth to my carbon copies, who are both academic and also they are very creative. And it was really stemming from a place of experience and trying to understand what it must feel like to have people not understand that we can't all be doctors. We can't all be fundis. There are kids out there that really struggle with the curriculum. They're called the dumbest kid in the class. They never really make it. They never get an award. They never get recognized. And they go through life just feeling less of themselves. And that's the same perception they get into life and the workforce with. They're always going to be targeting the low minimum wage jobs because that's what they've been told that they deserve. But what if we could find where their skills and their passions lied? What if, like all the other Western countries who promote music, promote models, they're some of the highest paid people and they're really contributing to the country's GDP. And in Africa, it's well, there are giants like Nigeria that have actually come to realize that not every child is going to be an academic. And you have some of the best designers coming out of there, the best actresses, the best musicians. And that's pretty much where the 1,000,001 Foundation is. And it wasn't just about just training these kids the soft skills to be able to learn to do several things. It's about the mentorship, reprogramming and rewiring the way they feel about themselves. Because the one thing I had to struggle with that most people didn't realize is that the trauma that came from knowing what it is that I want to do with myself and living according to people's standards made me always question everything I wanted to do, even if I knew I could do it, which in essence prolonged my success, prolonged me putting myself out there, prolonged me sharing with the world what I knew I had to share with them because I just felt that, okay, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't go that route. And it wasn't just about that. It doesn't only just cover the mental skills as well, it also covers what is beneficial for children in Africa. When you talk about agriculture, mining, you have children in China learning how to do things with their hands from as little as 8 years old. These kids are so equipped to live anywhere in the world and they're equipped to become entrepreneurs, to start things, to start phone brands, to start doing things, selling products at a very young age. And what are our kids doing? They're stuck in a curriculum that keeps them boxed up in thinking that life is nothing but getting an education, getting the qualifications, which is great. But what happens to that child that knows that's not my calling? Who do they go to? Who grooms that child? Who guides that child? And me just having to have actually walked that path, I was like, something definitely needs to be done. Um, we need to get our kids more interactive about what it is that they feel from their gut, because a child that follows their passion is a very fruitful child, and the higher the chances of that child actually taking on large stages and actually making a name for themselves. But we bombard our children with the system that is so rigged and tell them they have to conform to the ways in which our parents and our forefathers did it so that they can succeed. And most times that actually does not end up in succession. It comes up to a lot of young, unemployed, well educated children that could not survive a day outside their corporate or their work sector. And what we are saying is that how many people are going out to export clothes from Turkey to sell in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, in South Africa? How many people are runners for products that are non-African? It's not because we lack designers. It's not that we lack shoe makers. It's not that we lack artists. It's because we've not been programmed enough to actually see our own things as products that are sellable, that can actually create generational income, generational brands, generational chain stores or whatever it is. We have just told ourselves that only things that exist that are good are from the West. But I can guarantee you, I have seen designers that do better clothes than Dolce and Gabbana. You know, I've seen better shoemakers in weird parts of Senegal. And it's like, who is changing these people's mindsets to actually say, may the West come to us to buy our products? Let us be the ones that export things and send them off. Who is feeding the nation? At some point, Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of Africa. But because we're so busy in class trying to learn how to go abroad and do IT, do medicine, who is in the farms? Who is actually growing, creating our natural reserve? Who's going in the mines? It's definitely not us, because the majority of our generation is in diaspora working. And I can guarantee you, not all of us are going to have very pretty stories about how we are working in the diaspora. So the mindset has to really change from you know a younger level. And this is where I decided, okay, what if I was actually going to be that person, that hand holding support that children actually needed, a safe space for them to relay what it is that they feel in within their hearts, and find ways in which you can bridge the gap between the academic, their creatives, their social um, environment, and merge little young leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators from Africa.
I would like us to come back to that in a moment, because I'd really like to hear your thoughts on how do we shift mentally? How do we make those changes? The mindset has to change, and that's very profound. And I agree with you, and I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers are saying this is great. This is great, and I want us to be able to give you just a few seconds to think about how do you think we should approach this process of paradigm shifts, thinking differently, because it doesn't come easy, and we've done this for years. So the change is not going to be just like, oh yeah, sure, we can turn things around. It's going to be quite a process. So again,
Yes.
those of you who just joined us, this is your host, Dr. FM on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, coming from our studios in Toronto. And we're delighted that we have Annie Gonyora, who is with us all the way from Dubai. And she's supposed to be having her supper now and getting ready to go to bed. But she decided to be with us today, and we're so delighted. And you are a visionary, an entrepreneur, you are a storyteller, you are a change maker, and you have done that, and you're doing that. And it is encouraging to have people like yourself. And I know that you have done some work as well with women. You have done
Yeah.
some work in different communities. And I liked what you said earlier. You said you are a Pan-Africanist, and you are into social impact. And I said, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Most of the time, you know what? We are, me, myself, and I were very selfish. We think about our own little community or our own little country, and we forget
Yeah.
that Africa is a continent. And what I know I'd asked you a question about mindset, but what are some of the who are some of the people you have interacted with in terms of sharing this vision, of what you would like to see happen before we get into the mindset and the process of
Okay.
changing our minds?
So I think because of generally my personality, I'm a people's person, empath at heart. So I'm really, really grateful that God always aligns me with people in very influential positions. I don't know how it happens, it just always happens. Um, so I cannot even name them. There's so many. Every place I have lived, from the time I ever wanted to start anything, there's always been somebody influential that was backing me. I'm talking from the time I was in Zimbabwe, it was Reverend Damasane, the National Arts Council. I had the privilege of being mentored by people like Taya Chakarisa, the late Taya Chakarisa. The name actually 1,000,001 was birthed from him actually, because Taya Chakarisa believed that at a certain point he was going to plant 1,000,000 trees in Zimbabwe to increase sustainability and the social impact. He was really a go-getter. He was such a visionary. But and I remember when I started joining the campaign, it was not long after he passed on. And some of the people we were working with him, I got in with my friend and I'm like, somebody has to make his dream live on, you know. And that's one thing that he always used to say to me. He's like, Annie, you do 1,000,000 things. So as a pun, the 1,000,001 was that if you think I do 1,000,000 things, I'm always going to do one more other thing. So it was a play of words to kind of let his memory live on. When I was in Swaziland, I had the privilege of meeting people like Sylvia Mteto, one of the lady members of parliament. By then I was a child just figuring things out. Prince David was also one of the people that I leaned on for for advice, would have many conversations, and I'll tell him about the projects I was doing in Egupeleni. Then I moved here. I've been fortunate to be mentored by Farouk Kaline. He is a Pan-African at heart. He's a senior advisor to the Royal Family Office here. And he opened up portals of connections I did not think were ever going to be possible. I'm not even going to mention a lot of names, but God has been quite fortunate that people that I have met are people who can actually propel me. What I've seen is that they've always been certain stages in which these people come into my life and then I leave or I move or somebody else takes on the gap. So each person was responsible for a different aspect. Whether it was through mentoring, whether it was through financial assistance, whether it was through financial grooming, understanding what it is I want to actually do. So there are too many to mention. I would need the whole day to actually write a book. But I've been fortunate.
Understandable.
I've been
Yeah.
fortunate that Farouk has actually allowed me to stand in front of audiences that are so far-reached for me, and that has built a certain level of confirmation to say I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I joined his mentorship program, and it was to build, or he wanted to create a new generation of African leaders. And that is one thing I said, I may not understand how I'm going to do it or how I'm going to go about it, but I definitely want to be above that. And and that's just how it started. And because of that exposure and understanding what was being said, being in investments as well allowed me to hear certain conversations where people were very honest about their views of Africa and what could be done and what could be improved. And that's just how, the little ecosystem started growing. And now,
That
obviously,
is really encouraging. That is very encouraging to hear how, when God gives you a passion for something, he brings other people to be part of your journey so that you
Absolutely.
can accomplish more. And,
Absolutely.
you are a testament to that, some other people
Yeah.
invested in you, and
Yeah.
now you're still allowing other people to invest in you, and you are now
Absolutely.
in turn investing into others. So let's go back to this,
To the
uh,
mindset. Yeah.
the mindset.
So
how
for
do
me,
we how do we change the way we're thinking? Because right now, Annie, that we have other nations that are preying on our youth. They
yeah,
know they are innovators, and our
yes,
young people, many of them are escaping Africa like
yeah.
at incredible speeds. Many of them are dying trying to cross borders, trying to cross seas. They are perishing. So how do we change this mindset? What comes to mind? What needs to be done?
You know what? I'm gonna be very uh, honest and brutal when I
Please
say this.
be. Please
A
be
lot
honest.
of people in diaspora need to start being honest and having honest conversations about life in diaspora, because I feel, because everybody looks from the outside looking in, they look at us, you are in Dubai, there's this really glamorized overview of life in diaspora. And people don't actually realize how easy they have it back home. Yes, life is tough, but if you were to actually look at the challenges we Africans go through in diaspora, and we were honest enough to have these conversations about racism, the cost of living, the cost of just being legal enough to work and serve countries we actually will not benefit anything from, and at some point have to return back to our own motherland. If we could start having those conversations with our youths, if we could start being more honest about what it takes and how much it takes from us to actually live the diaspora life, um, versus taking up elms and going to go build our continent. I think that's
Mm,
the first step to change mindsets. And up until we have people that glamorize diaspora whilst they are living in bad accommodation, they're living in dingy apartments, they're working in very hostile environments, and they have the Instagram pictures to show otherwise. We are never going to change the mindset, because kids are programmed to say, I want her life. I want to live like her. I want to dress like her. I want to go see beautiful places. But we owe our youth a lot more, because I could never, ever imagine my kids being in the same situation. I was privileged because I don't have much horror stories to talk about, but the prejudice was always there. The the undermining, the undervaluing, you always feel like you don't belong, even though their words relay that you do belong, but deep down inside, you will never feel like you're at home. You'll never feel like you're good enough. You'll never be paid as much as your other counterparts. And I could never imagine putting my kids in the same situation that I see some of the Africans go through just to get documentation. Let's not even talk
mm,
about those that are living legally, what they have to do to go through to actually sustain their families and families back home. That's the most proactive. The next step would definitely be to heal and deal with the trauma that comes being a diaspora child. Our children are being raised in our absence. um, I'm not one to speak because I'm not proud being a distant mom. Yes, we tell ourselves it's what we have to do, but we are letting other people change the narrative of how our children think. And it starts there. They already don't feel good enough because it's like, my mom had to leave. And as much as times we want to convince ourselves that they understand we're here to work for them, it doesn't remove the innocence of a child and the innocence of them wanting to have a parent physically there. They just will not say it because the benefits that come having a diaspora mom also is great. You get the clothes, you get the latest gadgets, you get to say to everybody, and possibly some get to travel also abroad. But there's a lot of trauma there. And as long as children are not in a frame of mind to understand why certain things were done and how they can be changed, it's difficult to make them think in their innovative space, because we in Africa know it takes a village to raise children. And now our children are being raised by our elderly parents. So the contradiction there is just phenomenal. So that's obviously the first step. And then the next step for me would be integrating some of the soft skills in our curriculum. We spend a lot of time bombarding our children with the different parts of a grasshopper, and I use this a lot. Like, I always want to ask my biology teacher, like, what did you think was going to help me? What was this conversation going to do for me? It's in identifying the kids' skills and where they lean more, even as they are young, and then having extracurricular activities to be able to allow them to nurture those things that teachers can dictate at a very young age. I mean, I'm not a teacher, I'm not qualified, I will never speak as though I'm qualified, but I was able to teach 66 children. And from those 66 children, I can guarantee you Smangaliso is definitely either going to be in healthcare, she's going to be a doctor, she's going to be a nurse, it's going to be definitely something in health, because you see it even as they play. You're going to know the child who's going to be in tech, who's going to be in fashion. You see it. We choose to ignore it because, God forbid, my child decides to be a carpenter. But you've got people who have labeled the same jobs in the West, put a fancy name to it, and they sell furniture for £2,000 and we buy it. But when an African child says, I want to be a carpenter, it's seen as this grim, it's unheard of. So the mindset also needs to change from the parents themselves to understand the value of each industry, each profession, each skill, and the value it can possibly bring for our continent as a whole.
Wow, these are profound thoughts you just shared with us. And I liked the way you started. You said we need to have honest conversations. We need to be transparent. We need to be truthful in our dialogues. And that indeed is a good place to start. Because if we are going to be telling the truth to each other and about each other, then we're going to be pushing each other to the limits and actually say, you know what, things have to change. There are some things in me that I need to adjust in order to become a better person, a better citizen, a better Pan-Africanist. There are some things that you need to change so that we can work together and ensure that we are moving in the right direction. Now, you have highlighted today the reality of African youth as innovators. And other continents have seen that about us. I mean, I don't know what sports you are into, but I started playing football. You're not
I had an
in
excuse. I had an excuse note for every sport.
And I won't hold that against you, and we won't put you, on the spot for that. But I grew up playing football, soccer. But you will be amazed how many of our young people who excelled in Africa have been taken and are now playing in Europe and in North America and around the world. And they are doing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
I have a friend. I have a friend. I mean, you are from Zimbabwe, so you would know teams like Capes United and all that. I have a friend who actually played professional soccer in Zimbabwe for Caps United, and he is in Toronto. And he says, I can't imagine why some of our national soccer teams do not tap into young people who are Zimbabweans, who are Kenyans, who are from Ghana, who are Ghanaians and Nigerians.
Absolutely.
Bring them and have them participate in what's happening in Africa. So they are innovators, but some other people have beaten us to this. And this is one of my favorite statements in this podcast. You are annoying me and making me angry in a very good way, because the kinds of things you're talking about, these are things I, as an African, I'm passionate about. But I'm saying, my brothers and sisters, you know, as they say in Kiswahili, ndugu zangu, we need to change the way we think.
Absolutely.
You know, we need to change the way we think. And that is going to start by, like you say, let's have honest conversations. Let's have honest conversations. And with that, then you're talking about, in those conversations, we need not glamorize things that we are seeing from a distance. We need to be analytical. You can't just see things and somebody posting something on Instagram and on Facebook and LinkedIn and whatever, and now you say, I want that life, but you have no idea how they got there. And then you're talking about there is trauma attached to some of the experiences people have had in the diaspora, but we try to cover it up so that back home they don't see that. And all they see is, I'm doing well, I have money, and I don't. You know, but I have to give this impression. I was talking to my significant other who went back to Africa earlier this year. And we were saying, isn't it sad that when we tell people that we are leaving to come back, they ask us to bring stuff like, you know, I want this. Can you bring me this? Can you bring? After the 2-3 weeks there and I'm coming back, nobody says, what can we give you to take back? Nobody offers anything, because it's almost like whatever you have here, you can't take it back. And of course, there are, you know, country restrictions in terms of bringing certain things, but there are some things our own brothers and sisters can offer to give us, and we can bring them and still enjoy the delicacies from home or whatever it is. So there's a there's a mindset shift that we need to play and bring into place here. And then you talked about integrating soft skills as our young people to actually say, not everybody is going to be a doctor. Not everybody is going to be into, a musician. Not everybody is going to have this Zim dance, the Borodil dance. Not everybody can do that. But listen, we need to value each industry. And our young people need to hear this. And I'm saying, Annie, you're making me mad in a good way. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. Now, I'm looking at our time and I'm realizing that we're going to be winding down not long from now. But there are some other areas that I know you have been a part of from our sharing before. And I'm just wondering, as you think of youth now, you have this opportunity to speak to them, and they are hearing you, they are listening to you, and they will be watching this video. What are some of the things that come to mind? I'm glad that our chief engineer said we can have a little more, a little more time. So 15 more minutes to go. So what are some of the things? What are some of the things that come to mind in terms of what should our young people hear? Now, you are a little older than them, because I take it that you are not 30. You're not 30 or 35. So I think I'm right. So thank you for agreeing with me. The majority of our young people in Africa, they're around 30, 35 and below. So they are listening to us today, and we're doing this because we're passionate about bringing an awareness to our youth and saying, listen, there's a lot happening on the continent which
Yeah.
we need to work together on, help our young people, if value that, appreciate who they are, and not think that everything foreign, everything from outside is
Absolutely.
it. So,
Absolutely.
Annie, you have this opportunity. Please speak to our young people. I know a lot of good things are
Yeah.
happening among our young
Yeah.
people, but
Yeah.
let's build on that. Please talk to us. Talk to them.
Yeah. One thing I would definitely say is that every child matters. Every industry matters. It doesn't matter whether you are in modeling, you are in fashion, you are in farming, you are in mechanics. Um, some of the biggest names or the biggest brands we buy are also humans like us. The only difference is that we have idolized the West and we have villainized our own products, our own services. The sooner we are able to see that somebody can create a soccer team in Europe and make millions out of it, the faster we can realize that we can actually do the same thing for our own people, our own entertainment, our own radio station channels, our own uh, car factories. It all starts with us. The less we feel intimidated by things that are from the West, the faster we realize that for the West to actually have built the West, they needed Africans. This is why slavery actually began. If they didn't need us, they were not going to travel miles across to just get a couple of people to actually work on their plantation farms, whatever it is. And I'm not one to bring back racism, slavery, and history, all of that. We need to look forward, but the past needs to be a reflection of our future. The sooner we actually realize what Africa has, if we took one soccer player from Zimbabwe. I'm going to use soccer because that's doctor's favorite sport. And if we took another one from Senegal, and we took another one from Ghana, and we created the most formidable team, that would actually bring revenue into Africa because then we stand in competition as equals, not as workers. The sooner we actually start thinking, how can we actually monetize our own skills, our own products, our own brands? Stop with this buying clothes and having to parade. I feel so sorry for the people that parade in Dolce, in Gucci, and I'm guilty of it as well until I started wearing my own brands and having people realize that there are people who have got just as much skilled tailoring as the West does.
Mm,
Promoting our own African brands and actually bringing revenue from the West to our country. How can we sell anything if we don't have anything we are producing? We are
mm,
literally sending off our raw materials for them to create something, put a hefty price on it, and sell it back to us. We need to wake up as a continent. We need to
mm,
come together. Whatever Senegal can offer us to make production easier, whatever Nigeria can help to teach to make our designers better, whatever Zimbabwe can help to equip other countries with farming, it's a collaboration that is imperative to make our continent
mm,
stand on its own. And I can guarantee you, the faster we think about staying in the continent and building the continent, the better we will see that our continent is by far greater than any high rise
yeah.
skyscrapers you're going to see in Dubai, in Paris, or whatever it is, because we have the resources, we have the capital, we have the culture. And not to say that other places don't, but ours is rich. And it's high time people started seeing that. So if I had a moment to tell you, I would say whatever you know you are good at, it's going to benefit us somehow. Nobody is bigger than the other. An accountant cannot make his own shoes. A doctor cannot braid their own hair. So everybody is important. The sooner we start working like a tree, and I always say that if you want to look and understand how God works or how He would like us as humans to work, look at the design or the nature of His designs. And it's clear as day. You look at the structure of a tree. For a tree to stand as tall as it does and be strong, its roots have to go very deep. Its root network interconnects going sideways. Like the roots read, you don't see what is happening at the top even before the tree shows its stems or its flower, but everything is happening underground. That is us as Africans holding one hand to the other, creating a chain of currency, creating a chain of skills, of expertise. And the sooner we start reaching this way instead of reaching that way, the faster we actually can grow stronger. By the time a tree grows, the actual work has begun way before you could actually see the tree. And once the roots are so embedded in the ground, that's as tall as that tree can stand and grow. So for Africa to actually stand united, stand tall like the giant that it is, it needs to emulate God's designs, become root-like, connect, inter-exchange. We stand no chance. They always say, together, when you stand together, nothing can divide you. I can guarantee you, if we could support ourselves in a lot of things, like we would not be exploited as much as we do. But because they
That's
know that
right.
we're not united.
That's right. You are absolutely right. And like I said before, you know what? You are making me mad in a good way, and I like that.
I
this
appreciate
is
it.
this is this
Yeah.
is this is really really exciting, and
Yeah.
I'm so delighted that we have had this opportunity to talk to you, a fellow African, someone who is Pan-African,
Yeah.
someone who is looking at our youth and realizing there is hope.
Yeah.
Because I think one of
Yeah.
the uh, I think one of the tools that the devil, and I can say that categorically, one of the things
Yeah.
I believe the devil has used is to bring this sense of hopelessness among our young people. So that, because when people are hopeless, they do hopeless things and they do things that are self destructing, you know?
Yes. And self-centered
And
too.
exactly. You're just me, myself, and I, and everything is revolving around you, which is really dangerous because you become the only voice you listen to. And that's
Yeah.
dangerous because we live in a community with other people and we need to creatively find ways to reach out. I liked what you said about we need to create our own and not feel intimidated by things that are coming from outside. Now, that's a paradigm shift. That is a different way of thinking because oftentimes we glamorize and we glorify things that are coming from outside and we don't value our own things. This is why you find that our young people, they look down on Luganda and Kiswahili and Shona and Debele and Zulu and Tosa and, you know,
And they learn
Lingala.
French, they learn
Yeah,
Germany,
you know,
they learn,
that's
yeah.
right.
Uh,
And
it,
it's really really sad because someone has made us think this way, and we need to be analytical and say, how come we're thinking this way? What are the options we have? And so people like yourself play a very very important role, and I am really really delighted that we are having this conversation with you. And again, this is your host, Dr. FM here, Francis Munangi Mpindu, on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, coming from our studios in Toronto. And we're delighted to have Miss Annie Gonyora, who is in Dubai. And we're having this conversation about youth development, saying that we need to be intentional about grooming our young people, because not only are they the leaders of tomorrow, but they are also the leaders of today. And we need to make that balance. And I am again looking at our time, and our chief engineer, Mr. TYB, had given us a generous addition here. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the things that you have in mind as we wind down today, just in terms of, a word to our young people? By the way, we will have you back, Ms. Gonyora.
Yes, there's a lot of things I'm currently working on. So there's a lot to share there and unpack. One of them being my goal.
Yeah. I am glad to hear that, because we will have you back.
Yeah, being I am now the continent lead Africa for Empower. So a lot of that is
exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. It came quite a surprise, but I understand that it was the time. And one thing I can say, that it's never too late. I have been one person who has struggled with this journey and finding my purpose and accepting my purpose. It could have happened 10 years earlier. It could have happened 20 years earlier, but there's no such thing as too late. I am speaking from this because I have walked this path. I've been guilty of half the things I'm talking about, so I know they can be changed. I know the mind can be reprogrammed, and I can only look forward to support. Hopefully, in the next coming years, I'll get into politics. Who knows? Give them a run for their money.
Well, you never know. You never know.
Yeah. So that's definitely, it's never too late. It's okay to embrace the mistakes we make. It's okay to embrace not feeling like you belong, because those conversations you have with yourself are the very things that are going to help guide your path. When you get tired enough of being tired, you will think about foundations like this.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
had to consciously.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So yeah, I had
this
to
is
get
very,
to a
very
point
encouraging. And you know what?
Yes.
You're absolutely right. This is encouraging to hear that there are some things that you have been invited to be a part of, and congratulations on that appointment. I really believe that someone like yourself, with Africa in mind and the kind of vision and perspectives that you have for Africa, I really believe that a person like yourself will take this position to a higher level. You will take it to the heights, because you are someone who, not only an emerging leader, but you have emerged. You're part of this new generation that is saying enough is enough. We can't continue to blame other people for what we are not doing and what we need to do. We need to grab the bull by the horns and do something about it. I mean, when we think of what's happening in Burkina Faso, and this young man, President
if
Ibrahim
somebody
Traore,
could just introduce me, if I could just have 5 minutes with that man. My Burkina Faso people. Yeah. It is the time.
The other thing that's and the other thing that's happening, Annie, is the number of our own musicians who are now who have now written songs about him. And I'm thinking, these innovators just needed someone to say, we're going to do this, and they're starting to glamorize it and to put it on the map. And I think this is the kind of movement that is really, really exciting. And I'm hoping that, in my generation, those of us who are a little older, when we see these things and hear about these things, it brings a real sense of hope. And one of the things you mentioned that's really stuck with me as well is you said that oftentimes what has happened is we have allowed other people to undermine us, and we have allowed other people to undervalue us.
Yeah.
And sometimes when that happens over a period of time, you lose your footing. And we don't want to lose our bearings. We want to make sure that we stay intact. And again, you know what? Any parting thought in a minute? Any parting thought in a minute?
I guess I would say that we just need to stand together as Africa. Africa is probably the biggest giant that has been sleeping for far too long, and it's time that Africa rises. And we have a lot of work ahead of us, but the journey of a mile starts, or 1,000 miles starts with a step, In Shona, they say, teaspoon yakazadza gomo, so it's the little efforts. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This has been a wonderful opportunity to be with Miss Annie Gonyora, a visionary, a storyteller, a change maker who has been talking to us about youth development, talking about how we need to groom our next young generation of leaders. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful dialogue. I learned so much from it, as I usually do in all of our podcasts. And you have stirred up some things within us. And I like to believe that is the same with our viewers and our listeners around the world. Like I said, we broadcast in over 100 different countries around the world. And this has been your host, Dr. FM Francis Munangi Mpindu, on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And we're so delighted that you join us every Saturday at 11 Eastern Standard Time for these conversations, these honest conversations on matters pertaining to Africa. And what a delight it has been to have you with us here, Miss Annie Gonyora. And thank you so much for gracing our studios and allowing us to have this conversation. And like we said, we will have you back. It's not a threat, it's a promise. We will definitely.
I look forward to it.
I'm glad to hear that. We look forward to having you back because you talked about some things that are in the making, and we would like to find out what will be happening from there. So again, to our viewers and listeners, thank you for being with us. I just want to remind you that coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the Caribbean Flavor with Mr. Marcus and Miss Jen to Blue, and you don't want to miss that. So again, thank you for being with us today, and have a great weekend. God bless you, and let's keep the faith and keep on keeping on doing the right things.